Let me tell you a tale. It's the story of a man, known by 72 different names. What should I call him? When we first met, his name was Enoch.
Welcome to my review for El Shaddai, Ascension of the Metatron on PS3. Now, when the subject of visuals comes up in a game, you can hear me say that graphics are really not that important to me. I think part of that is because I was raised on the Intellivision and the Commodore 64, and I appreciate graphics that require your imagination to do some of the work. But it's kind of a basic blanket statement to say that graphics don't matter to me. When I say that, I'm referring more to realism. I don't need the most realistic graphics. I don't need the most cutting-edge graphics. I don't need the most high-resolution textures. And I don't need the most state-of-the-art models. But if a group goes out of the way to do something a little bit different with the visuals, then that could be something I think is worth taking notice of. And that's the case with this game. But at the same time, if you're using a horrible color palette that just looks disgusting, well then that will of course put me off. The visuals, I think, definitely step away from what many mainstream titles try to accomplish in their games, and they try to keep things very interesting to look at through their use of colors and paint effects and visually pleasing level design, and trying to bring something new for you to look at with each level you progress through. But at the same time, graphics still aren't the big seller for me. So I welcome and appreciate when developers try to do something a little bit different, but you better still have some strong gameplay to hold it up. And this game is fun. I'm not about to say, and that's where the whole thing falls apart, but it does feel like they're trying to lean on the look of the game, maybe just a little bit too much. The combat is fun and can be engaging, but because it's so simple, it does lose some of its momentum very early on. I like the concept of going in and stealing weapons. It definitely adds to the strategy that you're playing, or at least it could add to the strategy a little bit, but I think they could have spent more time developing opportunities for different strategies. And at the same time, because you are only holding one weapon at a time, in some areas it does limit your freedom a little bit with the combat. The story is based on old religious texts, but it's presented in what I feel is a very disjointed way. It's not necessarily that the content that's being presented is hard to understand, but how that content is presented sometimes makes you go, what exactly is supposed to be going on here right now? Particularly the way they introduce many of the character interactions. There is a nice mix of level styles. It's just too bad they couldn't incorporate these vast and eye-catching levels into something a little bit more practical into the gameplay, maybe with some sort of interactive environment instead of just looking like a pretty backdrop. And I find that I have a theme with these comments. It's like, this is really good, they just could have taken it a little bit further. Partway through the game, they change up who you're playing as for a level, which is a nice touch and was interesting when I saw, ooh, I'm playing as somebody else now, but it wasn't different enough. They could have taken it just a little bit further. Keeping the combat simple, where you only have one attack button and one button to create an alternate attack, that's fine, but I think they still could have taken it a little bit further. Perhaps in how your weapons affect an enemy depending on what weapon they're carrying, or how you fight with a group of people around you versus one-on-one. The boss interactions, it's often you run into somebody and you fight for a little bit, then you take them on again later. But this happens like 3 times, and that part gets a little bit repetitive, and all the fallen angels you fight in their regular form, for the most part they behave the same way, so that gets a little bit repetitive. But other times you're fighting giant worms, or one of these fallen angels were turned into a bigger, more complicated form. They needed to take that part just a little bit further. It's as though you're playing this game and awesome is just out of reach, just a little bit. It's the strangest combination of repetitiveness and craziness. But it's still a fun game to play. I mean, even after everything that I said, I kind of like how they try to bring back a little bit of the old arcade feel to the gameplay. At least that's what I felt like they were trying to do. I mean, I think one good example of that is, I remember, I used to play as a chef being attacked by giant pickles. It's just craziness to be thinking of that. I mean, what other game out there sends you out on a mission from God to confront fallen angels, where at some point in time you'll find yourself in what seems like a watercolor painting, and other times you're in a world with giant water wieners floating on balloons? It's just crazy in a good way. It reminds me of a time when games didn't mind bringing creative elements that stretch the envelope of what makes sense to have in a game. It is a fun title. It does present a lot of creativity, but it just seems to need a little bit more ambition to bring it to that next level.